All right, and if you're just joining us, we are going to go ahead and get started here. I'm Julia, a bookseller with Politics and Prose. We're live with Nana Nkweti and Andrew Sean Greer discussing Walking on Cowrie Shells. You can follow the link in the chat to purchase the book directly from Politics and Prose. And additionally, courtesy of Grey Wolf, readers who purchase a copy of the book within the next 7 days will be entered to win a giveaway tote bag featuring artwork from the book. More on that in the chat as well. If you have a question for our speakers, please use the Q&A feature found at the bottom of your screen. We'll try to get everyone's questions answered during the last portion of the discussion, though we apologize in advance if we run short on time. Additionally, we're glad to offer closed captioning for this event via Zoom's auto captioning service. To enable captions, click the CC live transcript icon at the bottom of the screen. We do want to thank all of you out there for joining us. We're really grateful to our family of loyal customers, keeping our business and our spirits afloat. It's my pleasure to introduce this incredible book. In her powerful genre-bending debut story collection, Nana Nkweti's virtuosity is on full display as she mixes deft realism with clever inversions of genre. In the Caine Prize finalist story, It Takes a Village, Some Say, Nkweti skewers racial prejudice and the practice of international adoption, delivering a sly tale about a teenage girl who leverages her adoptive parents to fast-track her fortunes. In other stories, Nkweti vaults past realism, upending genre expectations in a satirical romp about a jaded PR professional trying to spin a zombie outbreak in West Africa, and in a mermaid tale about a Mami Wata who forgoes her power by remaining faithful to a fisherman she loves. In between these two ends of the spectrum, there's everything from an aspiring graphic novelist at a Comic-Con to a murder investigation driven by statistics to a story organized by the changing hairstyles of the main character. A dazzling, inventive debut, Walking on Cowrie Shells announces the arrival of a superlative new voice. Nana Nkweti is an AKO Caine Prize finalist and alumna of the Iowa Writers Workshop. Her work has garnered fellowships from MacDowell, Convilio, UCross, and the Wurlitzer Foundation, among others. She is a professor of English at the University of Alabama. She will be in conversation this afternoon with Andrew Sean Greer, the Pulitzer Prize-winning author of 6 works of fiction, including the bestsellers The Confessions of Max Tivoli and Less. Greer has been a New York Public Library Cullman Center Fellow, a judge for the National Book Award, the recipient of an NEA grant, a Guggenheim Fellowship, and the 2018 Pulitzer Prize for Fiction. He lives in San Francisco and Milan. On behalf of Politics and Prose, please join me in welcoming Nana Nkweti and Andrew Sean Greer. Thank you both.
Thank you, Julia. That was lovely.
Thank you. You know, Nana, it is such an honor that you asked me to be here with you, not only because we're both born in Washington, D.C., and my first job was at Politics and Prose bookstore. So some of the people who are joining us are my teachers. Jan Brownmuller is here, who was my Spanish teacher.
Oh my goodness, I love it, the symmetry.
Probably tons of them, and also old customers were showing up for this, but also because I was Nana's teacher at the Iowa Writers Workshop. And you know what? Now I can say it. I always knew you had it.
Oh my God, I'm getting off the clamp. Stop it. Don't start.
You know, you're a teacher now, so you know that, like, you know when they have it, but you don't know if things are going to work out, that they're going to make it, you know, through the tough path between school and book. And so it brought a tear to my eye when I saw this book come out, and some stories that I remember so well, because I thought you'd made it, like, and it's so good. It's so fantastic.
If you mess up my makeup, Andy, I swear.
Sorry, I just feel
this is incredible.
I've reached the age where now I certainly can't take credit for any of it, but I remember. I think my first question might be too hard, but it's the thing I really am curious about, because I remember these stories, especially Rain Check and Momocon, and you were struggling at the time, this is probably 8 or 9 years ago, between telling stories of you wanted to tell stories of Cameroon, and you wanted to also tell what you called nerdy stories and of like cosplay and things, and you couldn't figure out how those fit together. But you read this book and it fits together. And you did it. And I want to know if you know how you did it.
All right. Thank you so much for that question, Andy. First of all, let me just say, I am so happy to be back here. You don't even know. Like, I literally, used to pass by the mayor's house of the mayor of DC at that time. Like, he was on my route to school and everything. So I was a diehard. I'm dyed in the wool Washingtonian. I feel like this is such a homecoming, even if it's virtually. Politics and prose was very much part of my idea of what literary culture in DC was. So this is really meaningful to be here, and I thank Politics and Prose for having me. Andy, you don't even know. Like, you met me at a time like when I was just like, when you come to the MFA program, at first you like trying to kind of, figure out your voice. I thought I knew my voice, but when you get there, there's a kind of like, sometimes like people are just like, oh, this is what works, or they enjoy certain stories. And when you met me, I was just like, I'm gonna go balls out. What am I doing here? I moved up my entire life, put it in some suitcases and moved to the cornfields of Iowa. I'm gonna take chances and so you actually caught me doing the most. You caught me, the zombie story was written in your workshop. It's just like, and then I wrote The Devil Was a Liar also in your workshop as well, which also kind of skirts the boundaries of like kind of African spirituality, which has supernatural witchcraft, juju elements. So one of the things that I say about like trying to kind of incorporate all that realism and things that don't feel necessarily like of this world or feel preternatural is that like I come from a background where like I'm the African background, the if you go back home to Cameroon and you eat my mom's fufu, and then you feel like you're steeped in the culture that understands that this is all Memorex, and we don't really know what that reality is sometimes like a slipstream. So there's a sense like you could go someplace and like my sister was telling a story that she literally went to the village and like the juju came out and was he's like the kind of herald of the king, and he kind of scares the villagers. So, and he's thought to have supernatural powers. So it's just like to make sure, stay away, the king is coming, pay him obeisance. So that's the background I come from, that background of understanding that I never wanted to do straight realism. I never wanted to do things that felt like of a type. I always just wanted to be true to all those different parts of me. I'm a dyed in the wool blurred, very nerdy. So you met me when I was just like really owning up to all those roots and like, saying, oh, I don't have to only do realist fiction. I can, do all the, I'm writing a sword and sorcery story now. I'm writing another and a sci-fi intergalactic novella. So it's just like, and it still has all the language and literary stuff, juices that I love. But I just want to tell things that, do things that interest me and get me revved up. So yeah, that's why I do it, So I'm glad it landed. You're never sure,
So you just found after that, it felt right to you?
It felt absolutely right to me. I actually ended up going, at the time when I was there, like there were a number of people who were doing, Kevin Bachmeyer came and was my professor later on, and Karen Russell. So it was just, I felt like, at that time, a lot of people were expanding their ideas of what could be touched upon in literature, what we, I'm always going to be about like beautiful sentences and beautiful languages, but maybe that beautiful language will be coming out of a zombie's lips. Who knows? So I just want to, at that time, I realized that I could just do that, and it wouldn't have to be poo-poo that this is lowbrow. We don't do such things at the Iowa Writers Workshop. There was a real sense of people feeling that these are the possibilities. And I always tell people, and I tell my students that, hey, beloved Toni Morrison lover, Beloved was a ghost story. You know what I'm saying? So it's like people have been doing this, since time immemorial. So I feel like that I'm just honoring all those roots in me, the nerdiness, the sense of the supernatural, the sense that, I'd like to take risks and what have you. So that's where it comes from.
I mean, I don't know which of the stories is my favorite. I mean, maybe it's the Mami Wata story because it really, also because I remember when I was in workshop long ago at the University of Montana, I wrote a story that had a mermaid in it. And the professor wrote on the blackboard, "No mermaids." And so I got a mermaid tattoo.
You do that thing.
Your rule. That is not a rule. No,
I love that.
And
so now,
well,
so Andy, I don't know if people know that you spent time in a lighthouse with a deaf lobsterman, but I'm saying that because at one point I'm going to ask Andy to sing a sea shanty, and like he's telling me he's got a mermaid tattoo now. It's going to happen. It's on now.
I've got piratey in my old age.
You got me hella piratey. I love it.
Wow.
Yeah, but I'm glad that you own that mermaid telling story part of yourself.
I am more glad. I mean, I think the problem with my story, I think about it all the time, was that I failed. That it was probably I wrote a realist story and I put a mermaid at the end and it didn't work. And I hadn't figured out how to commit to the mermaid. Instead, the workshop tries to get you to commit to the realist thing, which no one knew. And so that, like your story, the Living Infinite, is that I only have a PDF.
Yes, the Living Infinite, yeah.
I mean, you slowly figure out what's going on, but it's and this is where I want to ask you about language. And it's very hard to talk. It's mostly what writers want to talk about it, but it's very hard to talk about it because it's so abstract. Each of these stories is different in its own way. And I feel their connection in the vibrancy of the language, which also is not identical in each story, but which is perfectly attuned to that story. And even a story that feels more realistic, like I guess Rain Check at Momocon is realistic in a way, that the language is alive in the same way that a zombie story would be. None of them are deadpan. And I wonder how you figured each of these out.
Yeah, my writing is incredibly voice driven, and I've been like writing stories since I was 9 years old. I always say that Lizzie Bennet was my bestie. She was my imaginary friend. I was reading all that type of literature and inserting myself into Regency romances, inserting characters that look like me into Star Wars fan fiction. So I've always wanted to, and it was because of language. Language always fascinated me. So I've always wanted to make sure that anybody who reads my work, that you'll come away with some type of impression, because that's how I felt as a child. And then that kind of childlike wonder still persists with me today, like the wonder of the English language. I love, love, love. I mean, I'm very nerdy about language. I'm nerdy about fonts. And I told you I took a bookmaking class and, all the things.
Can I point out can you talk about what's behind you?
Yes. Okay, so this is actually a panel, guys. So some people keep on thinking that this is like a wallpaper or something like that, but it's actually a panel from this 8x8 foot wall of books that I made with a photographer friend in Iowa as the backdrop for my author photo shoot. It was very kind of like bootleg together, but we made it work. There was furniture from my house. I had to source some of my wardrobe, at the thrift store, and then got an African tailor to make me a little African-centric cowl. So it was, and then we made this backdrop, and then we took photos, and they came out beautiful. But it was just all no budget, just me and a friend and our creativity. So this is one of the panels, so.
That is the best thing I've ever seen. I love it. I feel like it's like, for readers who are getting your book now and don't know you, it's the perfect backdrop for you, because it's all of these million influences. And that you're managing to take them and make them into something brand new. I stopped you in the middle of talking about language, but you have a thesaurus.
Oh no, I absolutely love that you talked about this. My thesaurus is internal because, like I said, I've been reading, you know how it is, but readers first. That's who all we writers were, little book nerds first. So those years of language, those years of being steeped and being preoccupied by, words. I literally keep like a running words I heard. Like I stop film sometimes and say that expression is amazing, and I'll just write it like in my, my little notes document on my phone so that I know I can use it in a story at some time, and that's how, like I just love the language. So my voice driven work, I actually have like names for some of the voices. So like my zombie story is kind of honky tonk and hard boiled because it's told by this world weary, PR guy, and he's from Kentucky, from the hollows of Kentucky. So he's got like that kind of like a little bit of a twang, but he's also like a cynical kind of Raymond Chandler-esque film noir type of character.
That.
Right. And then my spiritual warfare, Devil is a Liar, church-based story has this kind of voice of God that I call lyrical and sermonic. So the language of the worlds just comes to me once I know the narrative voice. I just immediately start saying, okay, now I know that I'm going to be steeping them, like they're going to be some, if I'm in the church, we're going to put some some hallelujahs in there. And then, every once in a while, you just hear the narrator, apropos of nothing, just say, praise Jesus. So that's what the world, because that's what the world calls for, right? The narrator is invested in that world. I'm invested in that world. So when I'm in that Comic-Con world, you're getting like that, all like the teen slang, and you're getting you're getting all like the nerdiness that I love, like you're getting Marvel.
You updated that story with new slang.
What?
I think you updated this. It seems it's very. Yeah, you had to have, because 9 years ago people wouldn't have been saying some of those things.
Andy, so chat roulette was a thing when I first wrote this.
Mine's
were a thing. And now they've gone the way of the dodo. So it's just like I had to update it, and some of the things are still there, like Facebook, but like Instagram was like, still like baby stepped Instagram. So like now I had to put all
Instagram, Chat roulette is back in a different form.
Is it? I didn't know that. Oh, well, at the time it was like everybody was talking about it. So I updated the teen slang because you can't, on fleek is not a thing anymore. Like if you say that, people will be like looking at you like, oh, so sad. Is that how you think we talk? So it's like, it's Gen Z now. So like my Gen Zers have had to, I've had to kind of retrofit them with the talk and the street patois of today, but otherwise the meat of the story is still there,
Now, you've been a cosplayer yourself.
Oh Lord, are you gonna try to get a picture of me or tell you what I was wearing?
I wouldn't. Yes. Well, let's say your Instagram has not hidden that very well. So anyone who would like a picture of that, you should definitely follow Nana on Instagram. It's a great feed.
Thank you, Andy.
But with those, you don't still do that. I mean,
honestly, like I
honor you if you do.
The only reason why, if I did it, I would probably do it. And this is just because I'm a professor now. I probably do something that kind of obscured my face. I remember watching like Lupita Nyong'o go to Comic-Con, and she had like one of those Morphin Power Ranger type outfits where she had a mask on or something like that. I'm like, I don't mind owning my blurred roots, but some people are just like, is that the person who's teaching my child? So that's so I have to maintain a certain level of gravitas.
Yeah. I was born just a little too early for the cosplay. Like I was more like Renaissance festival time.
I love Ren fairs. It's all the same thing. And now you can LARP as a medieval knight. It's good stuff.
Well, speaking of language, I think everyone would love to hear something. If you have something you could read for us. Absolutely.
So I'm going to be reading tonight an excerpt from Kings, and that is the final and longest story in Walking on Cowrie shows, and it's where the book derives its name. And I call this a tale of heartache and hair grease because it's broken into several sections based upon Black women's hairstyles. And at the center of the story is a particular Black woman named Jennifer Chandep. and she is in love with this firebrand of a man named Dr. Kwame Johnson. And their story is a testament to the road of relationships being a crooked one and being very complicated and full of kinks. So this excerpt is from Kinks, and the first story of the first part of the excerpt is Pressed. I'm gonna take some water because my mama told me that, drink some water so your mouth is juicy. So when Jennifer was a child, her mother had pressed her kinks with a hot comb each Saturday night. By Sunday morning, her hair was as starch straight as the pleats of her church dress. When she was bright-eyed in Sunday school, Jennifer saw her obedience as Christ-like, saw the lick of holy fire in the blue flames of the oven range. Grew to welcome, her hands meekly folded in her lap, the molten hot comb as God's shining instrument. It was about enduring, a test and a testimony. She never squirmed, though her mind filled with premonitions of hellfire during the brimstone sizzle of her strands. Still, there were signs and wonders to be had in the steadiness of her mother's hands. She was never bore no errant mark of Caine. Her mother was faithful to this evening ritual, these kitchen vespers. God forbid the rapture come and her child was found nappy and wanting. As a young woman, Jennifer and her hair grew unruly, roamed free and unfettered, nights wild and her own. This was how she felt now on the Saturdays that Kwame came to her, demanding many things, both monstrous and delightful. She learned to relish Sunday morning's bruises as the signs and wonders of their sweet tussle, knowing she too had marked him with tooth and nail and the slick of her tongue. Only with him did she discover her appetites, how she liked the rough mouthful that was the word fuck on her tongue almost as much as the thing itself. Likes to trace her toe along the seam of him just to watch him grow shivery, becoming a herky-jerky creature, a thing unspooled. After he had gone back to parts unknown, she would lie there just short of breath, yet finally fully alive. Her face pressed to the sheets to catch remnants of his smell, a smoky, spicy thing that brought to mind foreign altars where the righteous sacrificed loved ones to their insatiable gods. So that was Pressed, and I'm going to do one more portion. Blowout. These are all Black ladies' hairstyles. Blowout, if you've never been to the Dominicans, just look it up, Google it. Blowout. Kwame kept her in bed for days at a time, sweating out her blowout, edges and toes curling again and again. In moments between, she would lie along the stalk of him, tracing twin scars along the hollow of his side. Battle wounds, he'd answered to questions unspoken, ear to chest, her hair tickling her cheek, his voice a grumbling lullaby telling tales of ancestors, of kings, of queens from Africa past. He claimed these kings and queens by birthright. No genealogy sites traced his DNA across the diaspora, yet by his estimate, Kwame was descended from Sheba and Sundiata, from Makeda and Menelik. He joked about his credentials, a Morehouse, Princeton, and Harvard alum, bread and butter on the stoops of Bed-Stuy, Brooklyn, where your street cred, the only pedigree that truly mattered, was measured by numbers of shots you survived and by how many and feared you. Kwame was cocky, completely at ease in his skin and his identity. It was seductive as fuck. Head on his chest, Jennifer sometimes bit down on his nipple till she drew blood, craving him, suckling in that knowing ease for herself. She, the child of a timid mother, ever grateful for kitchen scraps, one of only 2 Black girls in her Scarsdale elementary school. Her mother had stayed mute on the subject of their culture. Cameroon American, what's that? What did she know of her heritage, her brilliant ancestry? No matter how many boardrooms doors Jennifer walked through, sometimes she felt her steps falter. In the Ghanaian beauty shop, at a winged tribal meetings. She felt like a counterfeit African, felt the unworthiness of the maid's child tiptoeing through the servant's entrance, lightly, quietly, like she was walking on Cowrie shells.
That is fantastic.
Thank you, dear.
You know, and I could even, I just listening to the language, like even the last sentence, like felt the, I don't have the PDF in front of me, but felt the sensation of the maid's child. Not she felt like a maid's child, but felt the sensation of, I just think that's just a very sophisticated way to do that. And I loved, that's why I loved it.
I learned some of that stuff from you, Auntie. We have to like, you know, like, that's how it goes, you know, each one teach one, you know.
Well, I bet your students are watching this too.
Yeah,
you know?
they've been coming to some of the Zooms and everything. It's been wonderful. One of my students actually even won like one of the tote bags. You know, I was like, people are gonna think this is rigged. People are gonna think it's rigged. It wasn't rigged. She just was lucky. So
a reminder that the Grey Wolf, if you get a book in the next 7 days, is that right?
correct.
That you're in the running for a beautiful tote bag. I think I'm gonna try to get one. So.
Oh, you know you're getting one. Come on now. Come on now.
But you should join me in getting one. I'm curious about, I mean, I think the zombie story draws me back again and again. Oh yeah, by the way, everyone, we'll have time for your questions. We'll talk probably, 10 or 15 more minutes, and then we'll go into a Q&A. The zombie story draws me back again and again, just because you began it, right? In workshop, and now it's expanded into something. I feel like it's a movie.
Thank you.
I mean, what is it? It's its own world. I mean, so many of these stories are their own world that it's the kind of thing that for me would take me years to get into gear to do it. But like that story, what is it? I guess I'm curious about how it found its final shape for you.
Yeah, it's interesting because like, you saw that story in its infancy, right? That was one of my stories that I kind of had to wrestle with structure with, and I wrestled it into shape over time. But it absolutely, when I was in your class, I just wanted to get the opportunity to get the basic beating heart of the story on the page, I mean, I think like at that time when you saw the story, like I was interested in writing an anti-hero. I was interested in writing that particular honky-tonk and hard-boiled voice. I knew that I wanted to write a character that was so charming and charismatic, but was like, doing wicked things and people were still drawn to him. But like, it wasn't until later, like the version you saw, I don't think he had a child in that version, right? So like I started adding all these things to humanize him. So he's the guy who like, he basically there's an apocalypse, and he's the guy who helps these, the African crony presidents, like, cover those things up, and we're like literally in the middle. We just watched things like this unfurl during our pandemic. We're literally watching.
That's why it's a story of today,
Yes, right. It was like, it felt like, these things sometimes feel like it's just human nature. You're just like, you're literally watching people like, what are the numbers? Nobody wants to tell you what the numbers, the COVID numbers are. Nobody, international governments are hiding stats, so some of that was just, playing out at that time. And I figured out who would have access to that information, but the kind of insider guy who like, takes control of the narrative. And so that story has, it takes you back in time to Cameroon, West Africa, during the Lake Nyos disaster, which was a real disaster. And, this kind of like, it's actually in the Guinness Book of World Records as the world's deadliest lake, because unfortunately, it was just catastrophic. And I was in the country at the time, but I was in the capital city. And I'm writing that story and trying to kind of wrestle with these ideas, like, like this is a zombie romp, but it's meant to interrogate and speak to all these ideas of like, Africa, how Africa is presented in the world, how sometimes it's demonized, who tells that narrative, who's in charge, who are these, people who like, present the idea of like us being of Africans and Africa, the continent being a place of disease and decrepitude. And the zombies are just like a metaphor for that idea. They're not the bad guy, you know, like people think about the monsters, but they're not the monsters of that narrative. So that story was a story that, you know, when you first saw it, I, you know, like I go back and forth in time, you know, and now it's just coalesced much better because before it was all backstory, and now, you know, getting all crafty with it, you guys. This is for Andrew, because Andrew and I like to nerd out about these things. Like, you know, I learned how to kind of like, you know, I learned through you and other professors how to kind of, you know, better kind of, you know, make sure that the front story is doing all some work as well and has some juiciness to it and has things that draw us into the narrative. So at the end, there's a whole gun, you know, gun battle and what have you, and all these interesting things are happening there as well. But like, you know, the backstory and like why people do things always interests me. So it's just a better balanced story. So
I just loved it. I reread it again today. Just
oh yay.
Well, I think also I really it came back to me because I've read it twice now in this pandemic. And I know you couldn't have, you know, in a way you did see things coming, and you know, in a sense, because I think you have a mind that is imaginative, and as you said, that you see like the veil of reality is you're not very attached to very much, which gives you an ability in these stories to try on different possibilities. And I think this one, you found something that felt really real and scary and fun.
Thank you.
To say? I mean, it was just, it's, you know. Are you a fan of Raymond Chandler?
I mean, I'm a fan of every genre of writing. So I have like, you know, I had like all my country Western books and like, you know, and then I had all my like, you know, kind of like, you know, of course my like all my British books because I, you know, grew up in post-colonial Africa as well. So I had all my, you know, Thomas Hardy, and then I had my French literature française books, and because it was Cameroon is a bilingual country. So I read very, as I say, wildly and widely. So like, you know, and everything floats my boat. Like, you know, I read and teach graphic novels. So I'm just interested in the many ways, like, you know, we can tell story.
I was curious reading these if you had thought about working on a graphic novel.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Resolutely, I can say yes.
Really seemed, I'm like reading these over again, I was like, I really see a way for like, there's so much energy in them that I feel would be released with the art. And in fact, I've only had the PDF. I haven't seen the real book, which has art in it.
I have to say, it'll come
So they
to
sent
you
it to me.
bag.
I'm a moving target, you know.
Oh, okay.
I'm sure
You're
it's
too fancy. This gentleman is in Italy as we speak, people. In Italy.
It's midnight for me. But there's images in it, right?
Yes, in the rain check at MomoCon Comic-Con story. Yes.
Yeah. I mean, I think I would love to see what you would do. And if there's any artists out there, now is the time to contact them.
Like my little nerd heart would just squeak. Really, you don't even know. That's like I said, I'm very much interested. I teach a graphic novel class. I'm very much interested in any and every form that I can tell these stories, you know. And I think like the graphic novel element, you know, I talk to my students and teach that class and talk about, you know, what like text only writers, what can we steal like from their visual storytelling forms, you know. And I find that stuff fascinating, you know. And it's something that I would love to kind of delve in and live in that world, you know, writing those type of tales. So.
I mean, it's something that I've never, I've certainly read a lot, but I haven't tried it, that like to have a different kind of storytelling would be a challenge and a joy to do, to have like the visuals that would allow you to do. I always think of using the words. You can do things like years later, she would look back and think on it, you know, that you do the time laying on itself. But that in a way movies can't quite do. Graphic novels do it really well, that they have those layers. I know you teach a class on this, but it's just, it's something.
I know, like sometimes they'll have, like in the movies, they'll have that little cutaway and what have you, or in like in a flashback scene, or like they'll jump forward. But you know, like I feel like there's something that's be said. I mean, I'm always going to think novels are the best, and writing is the best. You know, it is what it is. Like, you know, the book or movie, it's always going to be the book for me. But graphic novels, I enjoy them because I like to read, but I also like to kind of like really steep myself in the visuals, and they allow you to like look at a panel and ponder it and look at all the little details that go into making. It's like watching the director's cut of a movie, but because you get to be the director and see like and know and look at the choices that were made, like, you know, why are we looking at this particular character? Why are they cloaked in shadow? You know, what does that tell about their inner life and what they're feeling? You know, and it's just fascinating to me. So, I mean, it's one of those things like, you know, when I was writing Green Chick and Momokan, I knew there had to be a visual element because I was like, they're a Comic-Con. There's got to be a comic book, you know, image in there. There's just got to be. And I wrote a character who, like me, has a very, you know, fertile mind, and she goes into these very MIDI-esque reveries, and like I was just like, that reverie has to be, I'm gonna have to do that in like living color for her, you know. So that image that you see in the book is just her, you know, imagination of like, you know, when she could finally take agency, and she's got her katana at the ready, and she's just gonna, you know, vanquish all her foes and vanquish all the people. When she's really vanquishing like the fear she has in life, she's really vanquishing her uncertainty. And it was just like, that was just a wonderful way for me to say that, you know, I say it with the picture says something else too. So.
Do you have, I should remind people, if you have some questions, you can put them into the Q&A feature below. There's a little bubbles down there. And do you have another excerpt you can read for us?
Absolutely, sure.
I would love to hear it.
So now I think I'm gonna like try to do the hard-boiled honky tonk guy. It's like, so now they're going to be doing like an audio book of my work, and I thought I was going to read it, but I wanted a guy who could actually do a Kentucky accent. So so it's interesting to me that, you know, I've always read this story, but I can't do that accent. But so now I'm a 50-ish, you know.
Did you choose who is reading the?
It's still ongoing. Like we haven't made the audio. We haven't been in, you know, that's still in production. But I absolutely want somebody who can do the Pidgin English, do the teen slang, do the Kentucky accent. So it'll be a tall order for whoever is doing this. But this story is the zombie romp we've been talking about. The actual story that I did in Andrew's class, and I'm now a 50-ish-year-old guy, you know, and I'm a PR man. I'm rugged and worldly. I smoke hand-rolled cigarettes. I'm grizzled. I've got a blonde beard, shot free with gray. So that voice in my head is like, you know, it's honky tonk, but maybe my voice sounds girly. So just try to match it. So this is It Just Kills You Inside, a story based on true events. Boogeymen are real in Africa, folks. Both the real ones and the sticky, crude imaginings that ooze up from the darkest of hearts. They are military despots who disappear your loved ones in the bump of that night. Or big pharma execs donating untried and untrue drugs to guinea pig villagers for tax write-offs. And then there are the workaday nightmares that complicate waking life, come courtesy of the tribalist, the spiritualist, the herbalist. This is why when the first reports of zombies came out, they were dismissed as so much hinterland superstition, bush whispers in the dusk. This was Africa, the land of juju, obeah, and mukti after all, a place where death rides in from the desert on horseback. With all these familiar horrors, who the hell was gonna believe in zombies? No one for a very long time when yours truly was on the job. A bit over 2 decades ago, certain tropical governments hired outfits like mine for their cover-ups. I was what some might call a fixer. My specialty, crisis management and communications. Coming in after that burst oil pipeline wrecks the endangered ecosystem of some tree huggers' wet dreams, or after your company's homicidal aspirin spree kills dozens, tamper-proof seals about as secure as a buck-toothed virgin on prom night. I'm the man who got that sensitive CEO in front of the cameras, contrite and doling out heartfelt assurances about maximizing safety protocols and thorough examinations of measures. Even better, I trained him to cry on cue. One muscular, robust tear, of course, all manly like. Should I continue or that's a good place to end?
Yeah.
Okay. There was a lot at stake back then. A good name, millions in foreign currency, political capital worth its weight in bullion. So it was a few $100,000 between my kleptocrat buddies and I for a tidy little cover-up, a tidy little media campaign that whitewashed the whole first zombie death tolls. I said yes before I even believed them. So used to their garden variety brush fires of their regimes, political purges, coups d'etats, ethnic cleansings. But I dismissed the Z word as utter crapola. Were they really trying to bullshit a bullshitter? Insulted, I hacked up my retainer and resolved to get to the what's of things when I got to the ground in Cameroon, the first hot zone. In the early Badland and Bedlam days, French scientists were flown in on the hush for research support. That French government, they really did take a special, mostly mercenary shine to their former colonies. I was flown in to whittle down their science jargon into reassuring soundbite-sized pieces and forestall any societal hissy fits. There was this lab-coated Frenchman, Dr. Georges Orliac, head honcho at the European Center for Disease Prevention and Control. He gave me some papers to sign, some eyes-only confidential type stuff. Standard for most of my clients, but somehow there seemed to be a lot of emphasis on this ink, a lot of jittery eye rolling of this particular John Hancock. You know about Lake Neos, Monsieur Cornell, said Orliac. Of course, I said. A couple summers ago, 2,000 dead, natural disaster. The Charlotte Lake belches up a cloud of CO2 gas that kills villagers for miles around, takes out their livestock too. Oui. And about the Israelis? Yeah, I heard rumors of secret Yehuda bomb sites, conspiracy theories. Some lake goes kaboom and suddenly it's a whole international plot. Talk of government's payoffs and people allowing nuclear tests in subterranean layers. So what the Israeli prime minister swooped in with a fully equipped hospital plane just days after the disaster. I've heard my own rumors. More likely, the French had done this themselves, broken a beaker or two of something heinous and were now on the slapdash coverage of their asses. Either way, I was on the job. So I didn't want to go too long because I wanted to leave room for questions if people have any.
You know, the questions, I will tell you, they're all about admiration of your reading.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
I can't get a Kentucky accent.
Which I agree. I think that's some of the joy of it. Here's one, Lonnie Pugh. I loved watching Nana read. It made me wonder if she reads her work aloud to herself while it's in progress, and if so, how doing so helps her revise.
Interesting, yeah. I tell my students to always read their words, and especially you want to get the cadence of human, especially dialogue. You want to get the cadence of human speech. You want to figure out where to stop and where the pauses happen. And I don't read all of my work aloud, but I feel like there's something about my preoccupation with voice. I tend to have like a natural ear for the musicality, the lyricism, and where the ebb and flow of the sentences should kind of pan out. I mean, that's my own superpower. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that I suck at like structure. So, but that's where, but figuring out where to pause, where to move, and where there's emphasis, that's part of what I do. It comes to me naturally. But I do encourage people my students to always read your work and to get that for themselves, because you'll be surprised how things they seem like they're right on the page, but once you sound them out, once you hear their rhythms, that's when you really know that you got it, you know.
I think that really is the superpower of yours. Also, that's what makes it so fun to read, because you've made it, the language move so smoothly. I mean, it's something we don't talk a lot about with students, is beauty or rhythm, or this is something poets talk about. But in fact, it helps the meaning, it helps the feeling of the story, but also it helps things move so well. I'm glad to hear that. I rarely hear writers talk about that. I'm so glad to hear that.
I mean, it's so, like I said, I'm voice driven. It's so important to me, like that, I love language and I love the beauty of it. So, you know, even like in the most nastiest situations where there's pain and horror, I love like the language to do, you know, be doing something around that and reflecting it and moving in certain ways. You know, it's got to be staccato here because there's like that, you know, breaky, you know, like frenetic energy. I mean, it just makes sense to me that way. So.
Someone else has said they would love to hear this on audio. When is that out? I think you answered that. Still being worked on. You might need a different person for every story.
I don't know. Is that, Andy, you got a budget for me?
I know you can't.
You give me that budget.
I mean,
that was one of my questions, right? Because I'm very like, because I'm so preoccupied with like language and I want things to sound certain ways. I'm just like, you guys, please, like, you know, and Grey Wolf has been very accommodating, I must say. I have a really great publisher, but I was emphatic that I need people to say things right, you know, like there's Black American, you know, AAVE, African American vernacular English in the book. And sometimes I write it out like the way it sounded, but sometimes it's just like, you know, like something like somebody wilding, right? You're wilding, it's spelled wilding. And that's how, like, you know, the New York Times wrote it back in the day when, like, you know, Hillary Clinton was worried about wilding and youth's gone crazy. And but if you're from these cultures, you know, you don't pronounce it wilding. You say, this dude is wilding, right? So it's like I have to be in conversation with whoever says, you know, speaks these words so that they know that this is wilding. You know, your panty jaws is not drawers, it's jaws. You know, where do you get onomatopoeic with, like, you know, the pidgin English? You know, sometimes it's just like when I do the readings, like, you know, if I say a character sucks their teeth, because that's just an African thing, you know, that look of disdain just comes and they go, you gotta suck your teeth, man. You gotta suck the teeth. You know, so.
Well, you were getting quotes from Linda Payne Powell says she wants you to read at least one of the stories on the audio. I mean, you've got a budget for that, doing it.
Yeah, I'm free. So I'm free. Yeah.
I think you could read that story that you just did as well. Anyway, but I'm not part of this.
I actually wanted to take an acting class just so I could, like, you know, work with a dialogue coach, because I was just a dialect coach, because I was just like that. If I could nail that, because most of my stories, especially when I've, you know, like literally you see me transform. Today I was just like, you know, I've been a little sick this week. So you guys, this is me being on, but like still kind of a little sick. But normally, like, you know, when I'm really, really in the voice, man, you know, some of the drawl comes out, but I'll never, you know, like, unless I work with somebody, I can't exactly get that, you know, born in the hollers of Kentucky, you know, bluegrass in my blood type of voice, you know.
You know, that's my grandparents, but I don't have that voice.
What? It's hilarious. Like, you know, like
Kentucky.
I was talking to my, you know, our friend, like, you know, Yah from Iowa, and Yah is from Alabama, and I'm in Alabama. I'm just like, but she has no Alabama accent. So, you know, it's never like, you know, sometimes it skips a generation. Who knows? So.
We have a question from Kathleen Franks. As a woman author, when you write a male character, do you wonder in the back of your mind whether it will succeed with your audience as a spot-on male persona, or if a female persona is slipping through? You probably had before.
Thank you so much for that question. I feel like, you know, all of us have those masculine and feminine energies coursing through our veins. I mean, I think, you know, sometimes, like, you know, we're so preoccupied about, like, this is what the archetype of woman looks like and the archetype of a man. but we're just all humans, right? So when I write male characters, I just try to kind of really dig into that humanity. I try to kind of convey their many layers. And like, even this character that I say is a little bit hard-boiled, right? He's still a father. He's still somebody who's loved people. Yeah, he does these things like, that some people would find despicable, but I still find ways to empathize with him and, and show those different nuances. I think we all contain multitudes, and I just treat my male characters, just as people, and try not to make them feel like caricatures, and I hope it lands, like Andy's a man and he said it works. So I'm hoping.
I think it's very persuasive. I think also you're doing this particular character. You're not doing all men.
Exactly. Right.
Yeah.
I think that's what it is. Like, they're human beings, they're individuals, like there's no one archetype of what masculinity looks like, what femininity looks like. Once you stay grounded and in character, I think all those things just come to you naturally,
Do you do acting? Because it feels like
I do not. Like I feel like I want to take, like I was saying, I want to take an acting class. I took one acting class, but I was like years later after I realized when I'm reading, I'm a bit of a ham, and that stuff comes out of me naturally. I was like, oh, maybe I should try to refine this, So I took an acting for business majors class at Iowa. It was literally for business majors, but
was it
yeah.
to give speeches and things, or?
It was to help them, because I think like acting, it just helps them with public speaking. It helps you become looser in meetings, and like when you're doing, I think it just allows for building of confidence. I think teaching is actually what helped me realize that I have a little bit of that kind of performance in me. Writers, we're nerdy people who sit at our desks all day typing on computers. I didn't know that I had that, that kind of like ability to kind of, I say like, it feels sometimes like the characters are possessing me, so the same way they possessed me when I was doing the writing, they literally like seem to possess me when I'm doing the readings in public. I feed off the energy of the crowd. I remember like when I was reading the zombie story, and I like to stand typically, and I ended up zombie walking because it just made sense at the time. But it's not like I planned that, because I'm not a trained actor, but it's just like the characters are kind of telling me what to do in that moment,
Well, let's hope for audiences for you soon.
Thank you.
Here's an anonymous question, which is, how many stories didn't make this collection, got cut, if any, and are they published elsewhere?
I think I have about, I have stories that I was working on, but they're like, I think that they'll still see the light of day in my subsequent books. I'm a big fan of short stories, and I love every story that's in the book. So like I didn't end up cutting anything and saying, hey, that's the dregs of, poo-poo. I think there's just one story maybe that was very long. It was called Abina in Wonderland. And it ended up kind of being cannibalized in some ways. So some of its themes and language found its way into other stories. So I think it was just that one story. But otherwise, like, I feel like I landed upon a number that I like of stories and types of, like, there's a prose poem, there's the ekphrastic work. So I feel good, and I don't feel like I'm a person who likes to add like filler content just to make a collection,
No, there's none of that. There's no, yeah. Here's, if I buy a bag from Politics and Prose, can you still win a tote bag?
If you buy a book,
yes.
From Politics, a bag, or
if they buy the book from Politics and Prose, can they still win a tote bag?
Oh, like so there's one tote bag available. So what I'm like, if you buy a book within the next 7 days, then you're entered in kind of the lottery to win this tote bag. I'm thinking about selling them on my website because they've been so much, like, people really love them. But that's a whole nother production thing. So
that's not your business model.
Oh, exactly. I'll have to start fulfilling requests, and just like, I don't know. I'll be at the UPS every day. I don't know.
They are pretty good. Hanya Yanagihira sent out a lot of tote bags. I don't know how she did that.
Oh wow! I mean, yeah, mazel tov to her because it was a lot just to get this off the ground. I knew that I wanted to do it because I'm a writer. I love tote bags. I have a collection of them, so they're very practical and real in my life. So I knew I wanted to do something to kind of like thank my readers for coming on this journey with me. But like we'll see how if I can make them more widely available.
This is the question people always ask me, and I hate it, which is we all want to know what you're working on now, which is a terrible question because we're talking about the book you just finished.
Right.
We're celebrating that. No,
Yes.
You don't have to work on anything else, but I have to say privately, I'm also curious, like, are you continuing this vein of short stories or?
I mean, I'm working on a novel. I spent like the last 2 years like working on a novel, but it was weird because I started working on the novel because people were telling me my short story collection would not sell unless it was paired with the novel. So it just came from a place of like, that didn't feel sincere and true to me. So I'm like revamping that novel. But what I'm really passionate about is the sci-fi novella that I'm writing. And that novella is like about a group of intergalactic slaves who their spaceship crash lands in the Hudson River. They end up getting like incorporated into New York, society, but they're placed in the hood as with Black folk as underclass, right? So it's called Fight Like a Girl. It's I have her the alien girl. She ends up joining a girl gang, becoming a rapper. I tell the story. The language of the aliens is my mom's dialect, so I get a chance to use Bamileke language and African language, and I just imagine like one day at Comic-Con, people will be speaking it like they're speaking Dothraki and Klingon. So it's really once again, when I get to have fun with language, I just enjoy it so much. So that's what I'm working on right now.
That sounds amazing.
Yeah. And sorry.
Oh no, finish your thought, please.
Oh, I was just gonna say, and then so this my friend Karen Russell heard I was working on this, and then she set me up with this experimental composer who has got a cybernetic clarinet. So he and I are working together to kind of like make weird theremin, weird space sci-fi sounds so it's like now a performance piece that is turning into. So I'm loving it. He sends me pieces and clippets of music, and I play that and I write. It's a whole thing. So.
That sounds truly incredible, and we can't wait for that. For now, we'd really like to sincerely, from Politics and Prose, thanks Nana Nkweti and Andrew Sean Greer for joining us in this discussion, and our audience out there for your engaging and thoughtful questions. Your patronage and dedication enable us to bring you this incredible programming, and we couldn't do it without the book sales to support it. So go ahead and follow the link in the chat to purchase your copy of Walking on Cowrie Shells. We have book plates while supplies last, or just visit politics-prose.com. And while you're there, you can check out our events calendar for everything else coming up this summer. And from our shelves to yours, we hope you're out there staying strong, staying safe, and of course, staying well read. And we will see you next time. Nana, Andrew, thank you again so much. Have a great evening,
Thank you everyone for joining us. This is lovely. Thank you.
Thank you.